Good morning. The picture in Afghanistan is changing almost by the hour, a developing story that has huge global consequences. 600 British troops have been sent to the country to help get UK nationals out of that country. Tell you more about this story in just a second. The Taliban, though, has captured Kandahar, the country's second biggest city, as well as Lashkar Gah, the capital of Helmand province. In a few moments' time, we'll speak to the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, and we'll have more throughout the morning here on Sky News. But first, let me tell you more about what's happening in Plymouth. 6 people confirmed dead, including the suspected gunman. He has died in a shooting in the city as well. Devon and Cornwall police were called to Biddick Drive in the Keyham area at about 6:10 last night. Police said 3 females, 2 males and the suspect died. The local MP says one of the victims was under the age of 10. From Plymouth, Ashna Hurinag reports.
It was just after 6 last night that police, paramedics and air ambulances were called to Keyham in Plymouth. Eyewitnesses say they heard the sound of gunshots. Police have now confirmed 6 are dead, 2 women and 3 men, one of whom is believed to be the shooter.
It's been a pretty grim evening for everyone in Keyham and in Plymouth.
As the local MP posted this update on Twitter, the Home Secretary said her thoughts are with those affected. She said she has spoken to the Chief Constable to offer her full support. She urged everyone to remain calm, follow police advice and allow our emergency services to get on with their jobs.
So it all happened in the area?
The shooting happened on Biddick Drive, a residential estate in Plymouth.
Obviously, it's quite close to home, which is quite frightening. So, yeah, scary.
It's not really what you think to hear down in Plymouth, is it, really? It's just not the ordinary.
The Labour leader said there's so much we don't know about the shocking events in Plymouth, but said it's clear tragedy has hit Keyham. Locals say the area is now eerily quiet as police investigate an incident they say is contained but critical.
Ashna is with us now in Plymouth this morning. Hello to you, Ashna. My goodness me, 6 people dead. We don't really know much more at this stage. Are the police going to fill us in more later on?
That is the hope, Kay. The latest that we have from Devon and Cornwall Police is this is not being treated as a terror-related incident. It's being treated as a domestic one. They are not searching for anyone else in relation to their investigation at the moment. And at the moment, we know that everyone involved, all of those people who have perished, all of their family members have been informed. This has been described as a devastating incident for the city of Plymouth. I'm standing at the entrance to Biddick Drive, just beyond the mound behind me. That is the estate itself. We know that officers have been there throughout the night, and within the last hour we actually saw a coroner's ambulance going up that drive behind me, and police presence is likely to continue throughout the day. Of course, later we are going to likely see forensics teams making their way down here and continuing their investigations. When officers were called here just after 6 yesterday evening, they were responding to calls from the public who said they were hearing gunshots. When they arrived, they found 2 women and 2 men had died at the scene. They also found another woman who they took to hospital, and she also later died from her injuries. We know all of the 6 people died from gunshot wounds, and it includes the suspected gunman himself. As I've said before, it's not known what the motives are at this stage, but it has certainly been described as a tragedy for this area.
Ashna, we'll come back to you later on in the programme. For now, thank you. Our other main story this morning, 600 UK troops are being sent to Afghanistan to help British nationals leave the country following the rapid advance of the Taliban. Afghanistan's second city, Kandahar, has now fallen, as well as Lashkar Gah, the capital of Helmand province. Thousands of people are fleeing the fighting and seeking sanctuary in Kabul, as our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey reports now from the Afghan capital.
Where they can find a space, they huddle in family groups. Every day, more and more people are arriving here, carrying whatever possessions they could gather together before fleeing the fighting that is raging across Afghanistan. This is fast turning into a major humanitarian crisis. The numbers of displaced people grow by the day, even the hour. The lightning offensive of the Taliban on cities in the north, south, east and west of the country is simply overwhelming Afghanistan's army and its government. Farida Khurasani's husband and brother, both police officers, were killed by the Taliban in Kunduz. They were attacked in their police station. She escaped to Kabul with her 2 children. She has nothing now. She feels failed by everyone.
Do you think the Americans leaving has caused this problem?
Mohazuddin Ukunzada arrived from Mazar-e Sharif a day ago, joining 1,800 families in this park. In Afghanistan, that's over 12,500 people just in this park. It's already miserable. It'll definitely get worse. These families have escaped the fighting for now, but they are not safe. The Taliban are creeping closer and closer to the capital.
The real impression you get here is that people feel that Kabul is being surrounded, or it's certainly going to be in the coming weeks. And of course, the situation's going to get worse. Food prices are already going up. Petrol prices have gone up as well, and there'll be more displaced people arriving here. And there seems nothing at this stage, obvious at least, that's going to see the Taliban stopped in their tracks.
On the face of it, Kabul seems pretty much as normal. The traffic clogged up because huge sections of the city are closed and barricaded from potential suicide attacks. 20 years and trillions of dollars spent attempting to defeat the Taliban and build a democracy here appears to have been a mission on the verge of total abject failure. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Kabul.
Meantime, looking at some of the other stories making headlines for you this morning. And Britney Spears' father has agreed to step down as her conservator, but only when he feels the time is right, he says. The singer's lawyer has described Jamie Spears' decision as vindication and a major victory for her. More than 1 in 10 UK patients were infected with coronavirus during the first wave of the pandemic while being treated in hospital for something else. Writing in The Lancet, researchers say the findings need to be urgently looked at to ensure lessons are learnt. Officials in Turkey say the number of people killed in severe flooding and mudslides in the north of the country has now reached 27. Search and rescue crews recovered a further 10 bodies overnight in one of the worst-hit provinces. Hundreds have been safely rescued by helicopters, but an 80-year-old woman was reported missing in Bartın province. About this time when we show you our climate dashboard, climate change on the planet. Top line is how much fuel we're using in which capacity. The one below that is how hot we are compared to 1881.2 degrees, up from 1880. Below that is when scientists expect us to get to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the temperatures in 1880. And below that, the carbon dioxide emissions. Pleased to say the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace can join us now. Mr Wallace, I know that you have a very, very busy day ahead of you, so thank you for taking the time. A couple of operational questions to start with, if you can indulge us as much as you can, and then perhaps we can talk about the politics after that. British troops arriving in Afghanistan, what is their role? Is it a rescue mission?
No, we are withdrawing. We made that some months ago clear, and the timetable we're working to is obviously the American announced timetable of September the 11th. There was always going to be a phase where you effectively put in logisticians, air movers, command and control personnel, and a force to protect that force. And that is the appropriate moment is to do that now. So that is approximately 600 extra people will be going in. The first elements will be going in by the end of the week. And their job is to make sure that we can continue to process the Afghan interpreters and the wider community that we have an obligation to help draw down some of those people from the embassy that are going to come out as we reduce that footprint. And then lastly, a group of what we call entitled personnel. Those are people who have British passport holders. There is a theoretical number. Those are people such as security guards who might be working for aid agencies, or indeed just British passport holders that we have an obligation to bring out. That requires
essential Brits are coming home.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
That could be up to 3,000 people.
OK. Kandahar, and Lashkar Gah. Is it your understanding that both have fallen?
Yes, they're pretty much now in the hands of the Taliban as we speak. Kandahar, not so much, but obviously Lashkar Gah as well, yes.
Home to Camp Bastion, of course, where so many British troops were based at the time. How big a mistake was it for the Brits to withdraw from Afghanistan in the manner in which we did?
Well, first of all, we haven't withdrawn at the moment, but I know what you're trying to say. Look, I was public about it, that at the time of the Trump deal with, obviously, the Taliban, I felt that that was a mistake to have done it that way, that, we'll all, as an international community, probably pay the consequences of that. But, when the United States, as the framework nation, took that decision, the way we were all configured, the way we had gone in, meant that we had to leave as well. And, that is a strategic decision that has been made. It is the case, for 20 years we effectively bought peace on our streets because Al-Qaeda was unable to launch plots from Afghanistan in the way it had. And we had obviously invested in education and support for the Afghan government. But, I have been pretty blunt about it publicly, and that's quite a rare thing when it comes to the United States decision. But strategically, it causes a lot of problems. And I think as an international community, it's very difficult for what we're seeing today.
Indeed. So what message does it send? What message do our actions as Britain send to our allies in Asia, in Africa, and in the Middle East? Tom Tugendhat, who you'll know, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, for the benefit of our viewers, says it shows the world that we are not to be trusted as a nation.
Well, I don't think it's about trust. I think what it is about is that these sorts of problems around the world have to be managed. You can't just fly in, fix something, and then expect it all to be fine, and they have to be managed. And management for countries like Afghanistan is not 1 year or 5 years or even 20 years. It's a long-term commitment. And I think that is one of the lessons. I mean, the other lesson that the Taliban learned was that if you use your country to attack another country, just because you have other issues going on, it won't stop you yourself being necessarily removed, or indeed people will take a response to you. And Britain will always retain that capability. If the Taliban decide to go back to what they used to do, and host Al-Qaeda, then of course the international community have a range of steps that they can take. But I think this is not just about Britain. I think this is the key. Well, we are a military. We have a military power. We saw what happened in 2001, and people forget in 2001 there were two military operations. There was the operation that went in to take out Al-Qaeda and remove parts of the Taliban from power because of 9/11. And that was done pretty swiftly and pretty quickly. And then, of course, there was the NATO mission and the follow-on mission, which was about stabilization and international development. The first of those operations was a success and ultimately ended in the death of Osama bin Laden. But I think and we'll retain that. But I think the lesson here is also, it's not just about Britain. It's really easy for people to make the narrative of Britain has let down Afghanistan. If you're going to go to Afghanistan, it was very, very clear that you had to go as an international community. And the reason you have to do that is it's not just about military power. It's about political power. It's about soft power. I've seen a number of people saying, oh, Britain can't do it. We could send 10,000 troops tomorrow morning and we could deploy them for a couple of years probably in Afghanistan. But if you're on your own, you won't get the political leverage of the neighbouring countries that you need. You won't be able to effectively defend your position by saying to the Taliban or whoever it else is, this is the international community concerned, and there are lots of things to be done to put it right. If you are purely a country on your own, the Soviet Union, for example, you then face a different consequence.
OK, so while that diplomacy, I'm sure, will be reignited with the United States, given what we're seeing hour by hour unfolding in Afghanistan, meantime, for now, we have left behind a humanitarian crisis. General Nick Carter, Chief of the Defence Staff, has said women are being brutalised, forced marriages to Taliban fighters, executions in the streets. How can we today, tomorrow, when those troops get there, start to try to prevent that crisis becoming a catastrophe?
Well, I think that's why as I've said earlier, I think that deal that was done in Doha was a rotten deal, I'm on the record as saying, because what it effectively told the Taliban that wasn't winning, that they were winning, and it undermined the government of Afghanistan. And now we're in this position where the Taliban have clearly the momentum across the country. And instead of the political process working, which, of course, if you remember, was what the Doha Agreement was supposed to do. And General Nick Carter was very clear and correct in pointing out that what the political part of the Taliban was saying and what's going on the ground are not matching. And so we are in a difficult position. The United States are leaving. That was announced yesterday. We are leaving alongside them. And that leaves as you say, a very, very big problem on the ground developing with the Taliban, obviously with the momentum. And it's not what we probably would have liked, not what we wanted. I did try after the announcement to see if we could bring together the international community. And I'm afraid most of the international community weren't particularly interested.
So, Defence Secretary, are you saying what's happening at the moment falls to the Americans?
No, it doesn't. In the end, the Afghans, we have put billions of pounds in 20 years. We have sacrificed lives, lots of money, lots of investment in education, 3 million girls educated at school. In the end, after 20 years, it is a perfectly legitimate question to ask, when can Afghan govern themselves? It's quite important.
Obviously, not now, not at the moment is the answer.
Well, no.
And the situation is as such that a humanitarian crisis, if nothing else, provides a breeding ground for terrorist entities to re-establish. We remember, of course, that Afghanistan was the country that brought us 9/11. So for people watching this morning who think this is something happening in a country a long, long way away, we saw what can happen when these people become disenfranchised and they send their terrorists to our streets to kill British people. What's our plan B to try to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, from a purely military point of view, we have capabilities that we can bring to bear from outside into a country if we have the right to do so. And we do have a right. If Britain is under an imminent threat or people are plotting in another country and that country won't take action under international law, we have the ability to do something about that. We do that often all over the world. We do it in certain parts of the world and other failed states. People will cover issues around, I make a periodic announcements about strikes we make on ISIS in places like Syria and Iraq. That's the same time.
About Afghanistan at the moment, you're not worried that could be a scenario as a result of what's happening there at the moment?
I'm absolutely worried that failed states are breeding grounds for those type of people. Of course I'm worried. It's why I said, I felt this was not the right time or decision to make, because, of course, Al-Qaeda will probably come back. Certainly would like that type of breeding ground. That is what we see. Failed states around the world lead to instability, lead to a security threat to us and our interests. We're very clear about that. That's why the West has to learn that you don't fix problems, you manage problems. You have to, go into a country if that's what you're going to do, and you manage it. There's no such thing as an instant fix, which I think is one of the differences between the West and many parts of the world. And that's what has. But yes, I'm concerned, but we do have capabilities to protect ourselves even after leaving Afghanistan.
OK, Defence Secretary, we're running out of time. I've got another couple of questions for you, if I may. Lord Dannett, the former Chief of the General Staff, says reversing the cut in foreign aid would help. Last year to Afghanistan, it was $167.5 million. This year, just looked it up this morning, $37.5 million, a cut of 78% in foreign aid to Afghanistan. That would certainly help with any humanitarian crisis. Is that something that the British government should reconsider?
I think the British government's been clear that the cut has been a temporary cut, but also, let's not forget, foreign aid is part of it. But remember, defence delivers huge amounts of what we call soft power. We recently had a team in Sudan building a dam, for example. My soldiers in my department are constantly around the world doing humanitarian support, not pure military support. So, there are a lot of ways to deliver that support. But, one of the challenges now will be in Afghanistan delivering aid. Are we going to hand a check to the Taliban in future? Especially, and that's something the Taliban seem to have discarded, which is they were clearly desperate for international recognition when they made those choices to allegedly do this deal. But, you don't get international recognition if you are committing those atrocities and the like that we've seen being reported. So the new challenge is how do we deliver aid?
OK, two very quick questions about stories at home. Gurkhas on the streets of Whitehall, you know that they are starving themselves to death, they say, because they want to have a meeting with you about their pensions. What should we do about it?
Well, first of all, that group of people, I'm very happy to meet any Gurkha. My father fought alongside the Gurkhas in Malaya in the 1950s. So, it is a pretty remarkable group of people. The group of people currently protesting are groups affected by the change by the Labour government in 1997, 2003. This was about people who were under a 1947 pension. It's a very small group of Gurkha pensioners. They had different advantages in their pension scheme in that old scheme. That scheme said that you got it after 15 years when a British soldier got it after 22. But there is a difference, and they feel that difference needs to be made up. It's been a long-running position of that group. That's not the same as the Gurkhas of today or the Gurkhas after 2003. They get exactly the same pensions as British serving personnel. But of course, no government of any colour, Labour or Conservative or coalition, has ever retrospectively changed pensions. That's not been the case.
Defence Secretary, I know that, you've said that you'd be willing to meet them. I'm sure that will probably help that situation. So thank you for the clarification on that. Before I let you go, the situation in Plymouth this morning.
Look, it's a tragedy what's happened there. The police are having another significant meeting this morning. We can rule out terrorism from that event. And I think all it does, it goes to underline the importance of issues such as gun control, but also, what's happening in people's homes up and down the country. It's really 4 million our local police forces, so they could be better armed to deal with it. But look, overall, my thoughts are with the tragic loss of life and the people families who've lost loved ones today. The police have resolved the situation, is my understanding, and we can rule out terrorism.
Indeed. Defence Secretary, a challenging few days ahead for you. We appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is with us now. Hello to you, Alistair. Good morning to you. So the Defence Secretary saying, I warned that this might happen.
Yeah, I think Ben Wallace, he's got a difficult line to tread because he is the Defence Secretary. He needs to maintain some sort of diplomatic dignity with allies, NATO and the United States, of course. But he is clearly, particularly as a former soldier himself, pretty angry at what's going on. He is surrounded in the Ministry of Defence by men and women who would have served in Afghanistan, who will have seen the cost of serving in Afghanistan and will be watching what is going on now and wondering what it was all for. And Ben Wallace, that is, I think clearly does not think that the withdrawal and the nature of the withdrawal was the right thing to do. Nevertheless, we are where we are now, and I'm afraid it looks both depressing and a complete inevitability. The Taliban are taking district capitals and major urban hubs, almost every couple of hours now. Kandahar and Lashkar Gah falling overnight. Both of those will be familiar names to many viewers because Lashkar Gah was the headquarters of the British mission in Helmand province. Kandahar, a major city in the south as well, where a lot of the RAF were based for a time, flying missions out of there. And now we look to the capital, Kabul. It'll be interesting to see what the Taliban strategy is. I think it'll be a whole different ballgame trying to retake Kabul, but it looks as though that will be a fight that is possibly only weeks away now.
Thank you. I want to return now. Obviously, we'll continue covering what's happening in Afghanistan throughout the course of the programme. It looks like Lashkar Gah has also fallen to the Taliban this morning, as well as Kandahar. The latest we're hearing from our man on the ground in Kabul is that within the next 30 days, it does appear that the capital, Kabul, will be surrounded by the Taliban. More on that to come, as I said. But first, let's get some more on the mass shooting in Plymouth now, where police have confirmed 6 people, including the suspect, have died. Joining us now is Dr. Tim Parsons, Senior Lecturer of Policing and Criminology and former Chief Inspector of the City of London Police. He's joining us from Plymouth. Hello to you. Good morning to you. Your reaction to what's happened in Plymouth?
Well, obviously, it's an absolutely tragic incident, and I'm sure it'll be extremely distressing for members of the local community.
I'm sure that's absolutely the case. One wonders about how someone can get a gun and shoot 6 people just after tea time in an area like Plymouth. The police have to react very quickly. They're told that there are gunshots and they run towards danger when so many of us are running away. How does the police deal with that sort of situation? What goes into effect immediately?
So Devon and Cornwall Police, like every force in the UK, it's got a highly trained and well-equipped tactical firearms unit. Their armed response vehicles are a regular sight on Plymouth streets, so I'm sure they would have deployed firearms officers very quickly to the scene, where they would have tried to cordon off the affected area and then tried to contain the situation. And my understanding is that the other emergency services also attended very quickly.
But important to manage the expectations as well of the local people who have, they know 6 people are dead outside their front door. How do the police start to manage those expectations?
Yes, well, absolutely. And of course, all sorts of other police resources will be put into place to try and deal with the trauma, to help and assist the family members of the victims. There's a huge amount of support that can be deployed to manage that, and police and other services are well equipped and well experienced to deal with that.
How do you foresee the investigation moving on from here?
Well, obviously, the full facts and circumstances need to be and will be investigated. I mean, there's fairly limited information in the public domain at the moment. I mean, police will be looking at, obviously, the firearm, what sort of firearm it was, how it came to be in this person's possession. Was it a legally owned firearm, or had it been stolen or acquired in other sort of illegal fashion? And as I say, eventually all that will become available in a public domain.
OK, good to talk to you. Thanks for your expertise this morning. Appreciated. Thank you. 6 people have been killed on the streets of Plymouth overnight. We're expecting to hear from the police at some stage during the course of the programme this morning, and we will update you as soon as we can. Meantime, look at the weather. Here's Kirsty. Kirsty, good morning.
Good morning, Kay. It looks as though the weather's a little bit more promising today for parts of the UK and Ireland, a little bit more in the way of drier, brighter weather, but there are still some showers to watch out for.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
No sign of a heat wave just yet across the UK and Ireland, but there will be some warm spells of sunshine today. Still some showers around, especially for much of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland too. Some of the showers will be rather heavy and blustery. Could be a few showers too across parts of the southwest. There you can see a few drizzly ones around. Generally speaking, eastern areas staying largely dry. Just a small chance of a shower. So the focus tending to be across northwest Scotland, where they will be still quite heavy and blustery with quite brisk winds, although it's not as windy as yesterday. Now, out of the breeze in the southeast, 23 or 24 should feel fairly warm in the sunshine. So some drier weather today. The showers in the north continuing through the night tonight. We also have some wet weather moving in across Ireland later in the night and a few spots for the southwest, and that will move eastwards on Saturday.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
More reaction to the situation in Plymouth now. Confirmed that 6 people have died in an incident around about 6:10 last night. Joining us now is the MP for Plymouth Moor, and that's Plymouth Moor View, I should say, and that's Johnny Mercer. Hello to you, Mr. Mercer. Thanks for joining us on the programme. I think yours is the neighbouring constituency to this one. What do you know about what happened, and what would you like to say to the people of Plymouth this morning?
Good morning, Kay. Yeah, largely just what is in the public domain at the moment. We've suffered an appalling incident of violence. It is not ongoing. The police have dealt with what happened yesterday, and now clearly there is a lot of work to do to support communities who watched and saw some horrific incidents unfolding on their doorsteps yesterday. There's families at the centre of all of this, and we'll do everything we can to pull together as a city to support those who need it and deal with what is, one of our darkest days for many, many years.
What was your reaction when you heard the news as it started to unfold, the fact that 6 people have been shot, including the gunman, we believe. We're waiting to hear more from the police, and potentially a 10-year-old child.
I think it's a devastating incident. It is. It's an appalling act of violence. It will have far-reaching effects throughout the community, which is very tight-knit down there. In Keyham, I've been in touch with Luke Pollard, the local MP, opening up a school and a church this morning for people to come together. Victim support have moved in. And I'm just, clearly I'm thinking of the families, but also the emergency services who, some details will, I'm sure, come out today about this, who've dealt with a horrific situation, something that I know everybody says it, but you just don't expect it to happen in Plymouth. And we need to pull together now, try and understand why it's happened, and reassure the local community as much as we can.
OK, talk to me about Plymouth. What sort of city is it?
Oh, it's the best city in the UK. It's an amazing place between the ocean and the moor. But better than that, our people are just extraordinary. It is clearly a heavily militarily themed city, but there's an awful lot there past that. We've seen the growth of amazing small businesses that have become the backbone of the city and employ thousands of people, since the sort of reduction in numbers at the dockyard. And it's growing. It's a deeply special place. And you just, instances like this, you do not expect. It is, they are incredibly rare. It would appear to be, contained within a group of people. But nonetheless, the tragedy is far-reaching, particularly, the details, you have some of them this morning as they come out later on today, are heartbreaking for many, many individuals across the city. And we'll do everything we can to support our brilliant people at this time.
May I ask you quickly before I let you go, you've seen the developing situation in Afghanistan overnight. We've seen that Kandahar has fallen, Lashkar Gah, where I'm sure you were based, given that you did 3 tours, I think, of Afghanistan, Camp Bastion, part of Lashkar Gah province. Your thoughts this morning?
I think it's a tragedy. It's appalling. I think the way the international community, but particularly the UK and the US, have pulled the rug from the Afghan security forces in this way is humiliating. And it is very, very difficult for those of us who committed a long time of our lives, but particularly those who lost people over there, to watch this happening and to see, so little sort of comment from our political leaders at this time. I think it's heartbreaking to watch, and we will reap the repercussions of this for many years to come. And I'm deeply sorry for the people of Afghanistan, for those who lost loved ones over there. To watch them overrunning Lashkar Gah now, and places like that where we fought and lost people for is, we never knew it was never going to be a picnic. It was never going to be the UK. But to leave the Afghan security forces like this is disgraceful and pretty humiliating for this country.
Johnny Mercer, thank you for taking the time to speak to us this morning. Thank you. UK sending 600 troops to get British citizens out of Afghanistan as the Taliban continues to take major cities and edges closer to Kabul. Just hearing there from Johnny Mercer, MP, who actually served 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan. Lashkar Gah has now fallen. He says it's pretty humiliating for this country that we have withdrawn, along with the rest of the international community, from Afghanistan. Earlier, I spoke to the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, who told me he was increasingly worried about the situation and further extremism.
I'm absolutely worried that failed states are breeding grounds for those type of people. Of course I'm worried. It's why I said, I felt this was not the right time or decision to make, because, of course, Al-Qaeda will probably come back. Certainly would like that type of breeding ground. That is what we see. Failed states around the world lead to instability, lead to a security threat to us and our interests. We're very clear about that. That's why the West has to learn that you don't fix problems, you manage problems. You have to, go into a country if that's what you're going to do, and you manage it. There's no such thing as an instant fix, which I think, is one of the differences between the West and many parts of the world. And that's what have. But yes, I'm concerned, but we do have capabilities to protect ourselves even after leaving Afghanistan.
Joe Pike with us this morning. Good morning to you, Joe. Thoughts?
I thought that was an incredibly candid, blunt assessment from the Defence Secretary. Of course, the situation is deteriorating very rapidly. He didn't want really to frame the deployment of 600 troops as too reactive responsive, certainly denied that it was a rescue mission, but he was incredibly critical of that US supposed peace deal with the Taliban, saying it was rotten. He also conceded that the Taliban now have momentum. And as we just heard there, also saying he's absolutely worried that failed states are breeding grounds. It's clear that this may be something happening on the other side of the globe, but it really could hit this country, not just because he is clearly concerned that al-Qaeda terrorists could effectively, base themselves there and hurt this country in the future, but also because of the unfolding humanitarian crisis. In a few months or in a year, certainly people in government feel we will be seeing the effects of this, perhaps increase of people crossing the channel. If Priti Patel and the Home Office thinks that situation is bad now, it certainly could get far worse. And that is before, Kay, we look at the anger felt by those who have served in the military in Afghanistan, or indeed who have lost lives. Over 400 lives lost in the British military. Johnny Mercer, of course, who we heard from, saying that the situation is appalling, humiliating and heartbreaking. The level of anger is something Ben Wallace is aware of. And I think that's why, in your interview with him, he was far more candid than we usually ever expect from a cabinet minister.
Indeed so. He says that he wasn't blaming America, but it did sound as though he was blaming America.
He certainly did. I don't think he wants to criticise the Biden administration, but far more blunt in his assessment of what the Trump administration has done. And I think there is a feeling that this is all very uneasy for the UK. He didn't serve in Afghanistan himself, but Ben Wallace has a military background, and he knows the sort of visceral anger felt by people who he knows on a close personal level. And that's very uncomfortable for him, I think.
Indeed. For now, thanks very much, Joe. I'll take at 9 o'clock with Joe. Meantime, let's take a look at the latest developments in the US lawsuit against Prince Andrew. We'll be talking about that in just a few moments' time. 6 people dead on the streets of Plymouth. We'll be speaking to the local MP shortly. And province after province in Afghanistan continuing to fall to the Taliban. More on that to come. But first, Prince Andrew is preparing to face a lawsuit in the United States brought by a woman who says she was forced to have sex with him whilst being abused by Jeffrey Epstein. The Duke has refused to comment on the case, but has previously said that the allegations are untrue. Joined now by someone who is who has interviewed him a number of times before, and that's Joel Arledge, who is a senior writer at the Sunday Times. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning, John. How damaging is this lawsuit for Prince Andrew and for the royal family?
It makes a long, difficult legal process worse for him. But if you talk to those who are close to the Duke, they spy a little window of opportunity too. They've been anxious for a while to cross-examine his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and they see a possibility that her decision to lodge this case might give them that opportunity.
There are crunch talks going on at Balmoral, as we know, right now. We saw Prince Charles arrive yesterday. His ex-wife is there, his daughter's there, the Queen is there. One wonders what impact all of this is having on them, not least because it's a big anniversary for the Queen next year.
Indeed, and that's the biggest question of all, of course. The damage to the Duke is one thing. The damage to the institution is quite another. And the Queen, as we've seen recently with other members of her family, is absolutely determined that the institution will be protected above everything else.
Indeed so. So what does that look like, do you think? He won't be returning to frontline duties, I'm guessing.
The way it's working out now, I think the decision is close to being made that the Duke will have to try to close the legal case. Will have to try to find some way to settle it. The reason for that is if he doesn't, the game of she said, he said, oh, and by the way, here's a photograph of us together, that will just go on and on and on and on. And that will cause so much damage to the institution that can't be allowed to happen. So he's going to have to try to find some way of putting this, putting this case to one side.
He only has, I think, another 19 days to go before his lawyers have to answer the allegations laid against him in a court in New York. You met the Duke, I believe, several times, but you have interviewed him, as far as I know, in 2017. What was he like? Tell us about the man.
He has a very generous assessment of his own intellect, which is why he occasionally does and says things that aren't very don't turn out very well for him. He has in the past been, I think, quite badly advised by some people. He has a very senior team of very accomplished advisors around him now who are sitting him down and explaining to him the predicament he's in and what he needs to do. And if he's smart or smarter than he was before, he's going to listen very, very carefully to them and do exactly what they say. They are the key, if there is any key, to unlocking this problem for him.
My viewers would say, we've been hearing about this case for ages, forever and ever and ever, and it's still going on. Is it coming to a head now?
It's coming to a very important stage because Duke is probably going to take this opportunity to try to reach some accommodation or go to court or whatever it may be. But it's still going to take quite a long time. I think we're looking at a year or two.
Talk to me also, if you would please, about, I touched on it a little bit earlier on in the interview, about whether at any stage, even when he's cleared, he could return to public duties, or is that it for him now? He's done?
He's done if they can't settle this case. That's why they're so focused on it. If they can settle it, or at least push it to one side in some way, as they would see it, muddy the waters, possibly try to discredit his accuser in some way. If they can push it to one side, then he's got a little window, maybe, where the air is clearer, where he can make a fulsome apology for bad decisions he made before, definitely regretting his association with Epstein and pledging to devote the rest of his working life to public service and good works. He's got a bit of an opportunity there, but that can only happen if he can push the legal case to one side. As long as this legal case goes on, as long as there's she said, he said, and this photograph of the two of them together with no clarity as to who's telling the truth, he really has no way back. That's why they're so focused on trying to engage in some way at this point and use this legal action to try to fight it, to try and push it to one side, so that he then has little gap to move on. But it's going to be very, very tough.
Thanks very much for taking the time. I don't think I've chatted to you before. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Talking about the future for the Duke of York. What about the future for football? It didn't really come home, did it, in the summer? But the Premier League does kick off again tonight. And for the first time in more than a year, stadia will be full. Fans may face random spot checks of their COVID status at the first few matches of the season. But COVID isn't football's only problem. Racism continues to hang over the game and the players and fans are under scrutiny. Shingi Mariki joins us now from Brentford fans ahead of their team's Premier League debut tonight.
This is what it means to make it into the big time.
Brentford are in the Premier League.
Promotion to the Premier League comes with riches, prestige and pride. But there was one thing missing when Brentford climbed to the summit of English football. For most of the season, grounds were empty. That changes tonight.
Is the besotted pride of West London podcast.
For die-hard fans of the Bees, the buzz that comes with a normal match day in full stadium have been sorely missed.
If you asked me 5-6 years ago, would you see Brentford in the Premier League within the next decade? I would have said to you, there's no chance, And it's not disrespect to our team, but it's one of those things it's really hard to get to.
It's the night that every Brentford fan has waited for.
I guess I'm still pinching myself. It feels almost unbelievable, but I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait for us to get going.
Little over a decade ago, Brentford were in the lowest tier of English League football. Tonight, they begin their first campaign in the top flight since 1947 here against Arsenal. As minnows in a league full of giants, they'll be hoping for a fairy tale season. The story of this season won't just be about what happens on the pitch, though. There are big questions about how the sport deals with racism after 3 England players suffered abuse for missing penalties in the Euros final.
I get to spend time.
At a community event surrounded by potential stars of the future, the head of the competition believes the answer is a zero-tolerance approach.
Anti-discrimination is a big priority for the Premier League and all of its clubs. We won't tolerate anti-discriminatory behaviour, racist behaviour in our grounds or online. If you are caught using discriminatory language, either online or in stadiums, you can be banned not only from your own club, but all Premier League grounds.
Who kick off?
All 20 clubs will continue to take the knee, but some players, including Crystal Palace's Wilfred Zaha and Brentford's own Ivan Toney, have decided to make their point standing up. Beyond that debate and the pandemic, this is how things ended last season. The trophy in the blue half of Manchester. With fans back and life a lot closer to normal, retaining that title would be even sweeter. Shingi Marike, Sky News.
Season starts tonight. Now, were you watching this programme yesterday? Of course you were. Well, take a look at this. That's the pianist, composer and presenter Jules Holland. He was on the show yesterday explaining how he was giving the gift of music to support children grieving the death of a family member. And here he is, the moment he did just that, performing a little number before donating that very piano to the charity Child Bereavement UK. How lovely. A quick look at the weather for you now.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. The weather is still fairly changeable, really, over the next few days. Signs of something drier next week. And actually, for many today, there will be some drier and brighter spells. So it's a little bit better today than yesterday. There are still showers around, some heavy and quite blustery through parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, especially northwest Scotland. But the winds, although strong here, are not quite as strong as yesterday. Further south, there'll be a few showers in the west. Not many. Eastern parts are looking a little bit drier, up to 23 or 24 in the southeast. So out of the wind, actually feeling quite warm. We will keep those showers going in the very far north as we head through the evening and overnight. Largely dry elsewhere, but by the end of the night, thicker cloud rolling in from the southwest, certainly looking wetter for parts of Ireland. That rain spreading its way eastwards as we go through the day on Saturday.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.